Welcome, everyone, to the Faith, Fiction, and Folklore podcast, or as we like to call it, the Tri-F podcast, where we try not to mess the podcast up. Today, we are going over the flat Earth. We're having a conversation about the flat Earth, and this time we're going to talk about why the traditional model of the Earth, why the round ball, sphere, floating in space thing doesn't work. And we're going to go over all that. And then we'll start to talk about more details about why people think it's a flat Earth instead in a future podcast. But for now, we're going to get into introductions. My name is Gary Paul Varner. I am a writer for Mind Matters News, and I co-host this podcast. Turtle Chief, how are you today?
I'm all right. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you, Mr. Cody?
I'm good. Hey, boys.
Hey. So you ready to get into it, or do we need to... Give you a minute to get your stuff pulled up or whatever.
No, I think I can just go with thought experiments for now.
All right, let's do it then.
Okay, so positive claim about the globe is so whenever you have a vacuum, you have to have a hard, fast container or barrier to separate that vacuum from outside medium.
Okay.
So what hard, fast barrier is there between us and space, right?
Right.
And the explanation for that with the globe is a gradient. Okay, so you got different layers of density, like you have a pond, and above that you have air. That's a gradient.
Okay.
So whenever you get up into the upper atmosphere, you have these different gradients of different noble gases or whatever that creates a barrier from the vacuum.
Okay.
That's the theory.
Yeah.
So, but in space, gases coalesce into a ball because gravity, they have mass, or the gases have mass somehow, and they all coalesce into planets and gas giants or whatever.
Right.
So how is our atmosphere containing itself? To me, it would dissipate based on what they say.
Well, if everything's sinking...
And all of the air would be sucked out of the Earth.
Right. Well, from what I understand of the theory of gravity, everything's kind of sinking towards a central point. So that's why everything's condensing around these single spots. But there's
it
a
works opposite
counteracting
in
force
space
as well called the redshift that's pulling the universe apart at the same time. And so that's why we get kind of the weird anomalies that we have. Now, I may be butchering that. There's people a lot smarter than me at the Discovery Institute that could talk about it, but
redshift?
Yeah, the redshift. So
I thought redshift was with how stars change.
No, what the redshift is basically you've got the universe expanding, right? And so what happens when you have that kind of stretching out is it's just like a sound wave. So when you've got a truck or something passing you, you got that kind of the high pitch that kind of gets lower as the thing moves further away. That's because the sound waves start out closer together, and then as they get further along, they move further apart, and so that's why you get a lower pitch. So when it comes to light, the waves actually they start out closer together, and then they move further apart. And so what happens is as the celestial bodies are moving away from the Earth, the light moves away from the Earth, they actually change in color. And red is kind of a lower frequency of light. I guess you would say it's further away. And so the theory is that we can conclude that the universe is expanding because the redshift proves that the light waves are stretching out the further out into the universe we get. I believe I'm explaining that right. And so you've got the stretching of the universe also kind of competing with the fact that there's no mass, like gravity's basically kind of pulling everything inward and drawing everything to a central point. I might be butchering that, but that's what I think is going on.
Well, it goes along with the Big Bang. The Big Bang started out, and it's still going.
Right. They use the redshift as proof for the Big Bang, because everything started as they call it a ball at the dot in the period of a page or whatever. That may not have went that far. But, the idea is that the universe started out from a central point. There was a Big Bang. Presumably God caused the Big Bang. And things have been kind of stretching out as time has went on. So, now I don't Yeah, and so I think that's the theory. I'm not a physicist, but that's what I understand of it. So
I mean, that sounded really good.
Well, thank you.
It sounded really good. So you think the Big Bang is like a real thing, and you just apply God to it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, basically, God said, "Let there be light," and
yeah, that's the traditional view. So yeah,
and it set the firm foundation, Earth, into motion, huh?
Yep. Now, there are problems, and Ken Hovind points out the problems. Number one, you've got planets and galaxies rotating backwards. And I think, Trevor, you remember Hovind's lectures. I could be wrong on what he calls it, but I think it's called the conservation of angular momentum, which is to say that when something explodes, everything's going to be spinning in the same direction. So if you've got his analogy that he used was the spinning merry-go-round of kids. So when you've got a merry-go-round going faster and faster and faster, and you got kids hanging on, so essentially, you've got all the matter concentrated in one spot and it's spinning. Then what happens is that spin keeps up and pieces start to break apart, i.e. the kids start flying off the merry-go-round. They're all going to be spinning the same direction as the initial spin. However, you've got moons and planets and galaxies spinning in the opposite direction, which means there's got to be some other countervailing force or something other than just the red shift, at play, because those galaxies shouldn't be moving counterclockwise if everything else is moving clockwise. So there are problems with the Big Bang model too. And I don't know if scientists have come up with counters for that or not, but that is your basic issue, is that the Big Bang model should work, but you've got these anomalous moons, planets, and galaxies and such. That kind of suggests there might be more at work.
They're going backwards.
Yeah.
So you think gravity explains what I was talking about? Is that
maybe not gravity by itself, but I think it's kind of gravity in conjunction with the expansion of the universe. Like, you've basically got matter flying off in chunks.
What keeps the vacuum from penetrating our atmosphere?
Well, I think would be the density of gravity. Like, the gases are going to be heavier than the vacuum, so it's just like a pool. You know what I mean? If you're spinning a pool, you're walking around in a pool and you make that little whirlpool thing, all the matter and debris is going to collect at a central point. So if you've got this spinning, expanding universe that is basically a giant whirlpool, then all the heavier elements, your gases, your solid matter, they're all going to collect at central points. Does that make sense? The only difference from the pool analogy being is that the universe is continually going outward. So instead of, expanding at a central point, you've got, I guess you would say, little islands throughout the universe, planets, galaxies, and so on. And they're just spinning in their own little hubs as everything gets wider and wider. I'm probably butchering that, and there's some scientists going, all of that is wrong. But that's the best I could do.
It got me thinking about the motion, like spinning in a whirlpool. I mean, but that vortex is eventually going to expand out into a donut.
Yes, that's what they would eventually call the heat death of the universe. Eventually, everything is still expanding technically. Eventually, it's going to get to the point where the universe can't hold itself together, and so that's when we all die, I guess.
Interesting.
So
that's a bleak mindset.
Oh yeah, that's why they're such nihilistic cynics.
Yeah.
So
okay, all right. So we got that out of the way. You believe the Bible is infallible, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The Lord reigns. He is clothed with majesty. This is Psalm 93:1. The Lord has clothed and girded himself with strength. Indeed, the world is firmly established. It will not be moved.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you feel about that.
Well, the infallibility is true. I believe in the infallibility of the scripture, but you also have to apply reader's comprehension. And I'm not saying that to be a but. It's just, a lot of people cherry pick verses to make as proof text, but they don't remember the book. Psalms is a poetic book. And so it's going to have hyperbole. It's going to have imagery to communicate certain ideas. Now, not every book's going to be like that, but Psalms would be like that.
Then we won't use Psalms. About Isaiah 40:22. It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain, and who stretches the oh man, my eyes are toasted tonight. Who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in.
For those of you who don't know, you said you spent the day welding, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's why he's having issues with his eyes. For anybody.
Yeah, if you change everything to dark mode, that'll really help.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that.
We'll go over it later.
No, it's the same kind of problem because it's a prophecy and they're using poetic narrative. I mean, the earth is like grasshoppers.
No, the inhabitants are like grasshoppers.
The inhabitants are like grasshoppers. I believe that's, correct me if I'm wrong, Trevor, I believe that's a simile, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, but you can say that like when you're on a plane. It's just saying he's in a high place.
Yeah, you're right. That's what it is. But when you've got that already in the text, you can't use any of the other imagery as a proof text for the way the earth is set up.
What about the circle part there, bud?
Well, it could just as easily be a sphere. A sphere is a circle.
But it says circle. A sphere is not a circle.
Well, again, you can't get that picky with it because it's poetic.
Oh,
if he says circle,
Isaiah,
but then he means
the word
sphere, it's kind of the same deal. So, I mean, you can't really use it as a proof text.
Think about it in, let's see, the context of the time.
Okay.
How many balls were around there?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
The ball? A ball?
The ball, yeah.
Okay.
Why didn't he use
what balls would they have had back then?
Huh?
I mean, they wouldn't even have had the language for a sphere.
Well, no, they wouldn't have called it a sphere, but that just adds to my argument that if they use the word circle, which is probably being translated from another word that could mean we don't know anything about, but it doesn't really matter. The point is it's imagery. He sits above the circle of the earth. I mean, it's just imagery to indicate that he's above the earth. It's not.
How would he see? How would he see all the inhabitants?
You can't use that as science or a scientific claim because it's clearly hyperbole.
But it's infallible.
That doesn't mean you can't apply reader's comprehension. That's my frustration with a lot of these traditional like preacher types. Is it's like, yes, the Bible is infallible, but look, if it was supposed to be like a proof, like everything is supposed to be read like Proverbs or some kind of definitive proof text, Christ would not have used parables.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, like, how do you get around? He established the earth upon its foundations so that it will not totter.
It's ground. It's stable. You can build stuff on it.
I know.
But why would that be a claim for the earth being flat as opposed to round? I mean, there could be foundations on a round earth. Why would there not be? I mean, we have ground, we have slate, we have solid structures. It's a parallel based on what we know to establish that basically the Almighty has built this thing stable and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon until he decides to roll the heavens back as a scroll. Which doesn't mean the universe is literally a scroll.
I mean, there's a lot of flat hyperbole in the Bible. I'm just saying.
You might be right. I don't know all the scriptures about it. I just know that if you're using Psalms or if you're using some of the poetic nature, like lyrics or what's the word? Dadgummit. The stuff.
What about Job?
Job's the same thing. Like
that so is the whole Bible is just poetic and it doesn't matter?
No, the first. Do you want me to break it down? Let me break it down. The Torah has got Genesis, which there is debate about which is poetic and which isn't. There's there might be tall tales. It might all be literal. People go back and forth. Genesis is debatable. But Exodus is a historic narrative. You're meant to take...
Infallibly debatable.
Huh?
Infallibly debatable.
That's very witty. I like that. No. Genesis, people debate about whether or not it's meant to be taken literally. I think it's meant to be more taken literally than not, personally. But people go back and forth. Exodus is certainly a historical narrative. Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, also historical. Judges, historical. 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, all of that's historical. But when you get into Solomon, You get into Ecclesiastes, Proverbs, and then you've got David with Psalms, and then you've got the greater prophets. Everything that you've mentioned, with the exception of Job's, is part of the greater prophets, and Job's is still kind of in that genre. You're talking about a lot of analogies to demonstrate specific points. That's hyperbole. You're going to have a lot of poetical language. And then you've got the Gospels. That's supposed to be taken like from read historically. And then you've got the epistles, which aren't even laws. It's Paul talking about like how to apply the old law, the Levitical law, to a Gentile context. So that's a whole genre. The epistles are a whole genre unto themselves. And then you've got Revelations, which is a prophecy, and that's going to have like literal stuff mixed in with, poetic narrative as well. So it depends on the book. Like the genre of the book is going to affect how you read the scriptures, which is why quote mining doesn't work.
Okay, it sounds like you don't believe the Bible, though.
I don't believe the way that what would the word be? Some very traditional preachers take it as a proof text. Look, I can use reader's comprehension on a historic book talking about Abraham Lincoln. That does not mean I believe that the book is lying or that Abraham Lincoln didn't exist.
I don't see how that translates.
Okay, well, what is reader's comprehension?
When you comprehend what you're reading?
No, reader's comprehension is a certain type of, it's basically literary criticism. You look at the genre, you look at the author, you look at the historical context, and then you look at what's being said. And you take all of that together to interpret what you're reading. So
how do you interpret, after this I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that
he's clearly having a vision.
So who? First of all, we need to look at who is writing that down?
John of Patmos.
Okay, so why is he writing that down?
Because he's describing what he's seeing to you.
Okay, where did he see it at?
In a vision.
In a vision or a dream or?
So you're saying he's full of shit?
No, the vision is he saw the vision. The vision was given to him.
This is what he saw, and he's writing it down. So just like if you had a dream, you would write it down, right? Okay, so
the vision was given to him by who?
By God.
Okay, so how can there be 4 corners on a ball?
Well, it's an allegory. Visions have like basic symbolism to them, and he would understand the symbolism.
You got the North Pole, South Pole, East Pole, and West Pole, right? That doesn't make.
That's not a thing.
It a flat Earth.
Made that up.
Okay, well, take the vision of Daniel. Let's look at the vision of Daniel. Daniel had the ability to interpret dreams, right? So God gave Nebuchadnezzar a dream, correct? And in the dream, there's, I believe it's 7 cows that are healthy, 7 cows that are starving, 7 bushels of wheat that are good, 7 bushels of wheat that are bad.
Yeah, they represent periods of time.
Exactly, they represent years. So the winds and the angels and all of this stuff are going to be symbolic. They're going to represent something. That doesn't mean there's literally 4 winds. In the same way there weren't literally 7 cows.
What are the 4 corners of the earth, though? What is he saying?
North, south, east, and west, the 4 directions. I mean, they had directions at the time, so I'm assuming 4 corners means the directions.
The verse just doesn't make sense from that angle.
Well, why do you say that?
Because it doesn't. With that preconceived notion, if you read that verse, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you keep repeating that, but why? I'm saying when he said 4 corners,
what do you mean,
he means
why?
north, south, east, and west. I think that makes sense because there's 4 directions, and he's using the directions as corners.
Because the context of the verse is, after I saw this, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the winds.
Yeah, so there's northerly winds, southerly winds, easterly winds. They would have been aware of that because these were fishermen.
Where is the east?
The east?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you tell me, it's on a map. I mean, I don't know what you mean by the question.
Right. It doesn't make sense. If you have a ball, you can't hold back there's no corner. You can't hold back the wind because
The
it's
angels aren't literally holding back the winds either. The winds represent something. We may not know what it is, but the winds are
now
not
the winds
literally
don't represent
winds.
themselves.
Huh?
Okay. Now the winds aren't wind.
Well, you can be snarky all you want, but obviously it's a poetic narrative. And so
Everything
it's
I've said
not-
has been
you're
a
not gonna
poetic
be
narrative.
taking- Yes, because it's a vision. I just went back to Daniel and explained how one vision how that vision worked. Like the 7 cows represented years, and you understood that. The cows
Yeah.
were not literally cows. There were not literally cows that were going to show up and eat Pharaoh or something. The cows represented years. So
Yeah.
in the same way, the angel and the 4 winds represent something in John's vision.
We just
It's the
haven't seen it
same
yet.
deal. So to
Daniel's-
make my case, I went to another scripture in the Bible to prove why I think this is a symbolic representation of something. You're telling me that doesn't make sense, but you're not telling me why.
Well, okay. So the Daniel thing makes sense to me because there is sets of time that match up with his visions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so you're using external resources or external sources to make that comparison. Prior knowledge outside of the verse itself, to interpret what that verse means.
Yes.
Yes, I'm doing the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, so you agree with me on
Okay.
the Daniel vision, but why do
Well-
you disagree with me on John's vision?
Because when you can take in these sets of time that we're given and apply it to Daniel's vision,
Mm-hmm.
you can't take the ball Earth and apply it to John of Patmos's vision because it doesn't make sense.
Yes, but why?
But with the flat Earth, you can.
Okay, so let's try it this way. Let's try going inductive. You think that the flat Earth makes more sense than the round Earth. And I say directions, you say it's literal corners. Why would you think it's literal corners and not directions?
Because that's what it says.
Give me something else. That's not persuasive to me. Because if we've already established that visions are prone to like symbolism and there's poetic narratives inside those books, why would
I can't
directions
think of
not make
anything else
sense?
that would represent.
Huh?
Direction. It doesn't make sense in my head to me to call that. Just because it makes sense in your head, I mean, cool.
I understand that, but you have to tell me why. You have to give me a why other than it doesn't make sense because it doesn't make sense.
Because I have another world lens I can look at it through, and it makes more sense.
Okay, why do you
You
find
haven't
that
seen through
world
that lens
lens
yet.
compelling?
That's all I'm trying to show you.
Why do you think that world lens is compelling? What makes that more compelling to you than my theory?
Because calling corners literal corners instead of
So it's the
directions
word
makes more
corners.
sense.
So it's the word corners that you're locked in on. You think
All of it.
corners needs
Corners,
to be taken
lens.
literally. It's
So-
not symbolic of anything else. The corners has to be corners.
What else could it be symbolic of?
I just told you directions. I'm thinking
Directions, yeah,
corners
but-
means directions.
But on a ball, the directions don't end. They don't have a stopping point.
Yes, they do, because they come from a directions to a sail. Like these were fishermen, and they understood things in nautical terms. So you have the 4 winds. You have a wind from the north, which means something. You have the wind from the east, which means something. You have a wind from the west that means something, and you have a wind from the south that means something. Those winds take a ship to a specific direction. So from somebody who lives as a fisherman, to save the 4 winds is actually quite substantial. That's like significant because that determines whether or not they're going to make their destination. If there's no
Sure.
winds at all, that means the ship is stuck and everything's at a dead calm. So when he
Sure.
says hold back the 4 corners of the wind, it could mean, and I don't know this for sure, I'm just spitting out an example to make the point. It could mean that the earth itself, its politics, its way of life, everything, maybe even the rotation of the earth, it all stops. Everything comes to a standstill.
And it could just be as simple as a tornado. Because tornadoes and hurricanes come from wherever.
So in your opinion, the wind doesn't have a starting point?
No, it would be like, what direction is it hitting the sail from?
Because Enoch talks about all this, like where the winds come from. And the angels are like aspects of nature, and they have control or authority over the winds. So like there's an angel that has, based on Enoch, what Enoch says, each angel has a authority over a specific wind or
Okay.
Wind and region, yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Okay, so like the angels have like domains, like in Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think that's fine. So maybe that's.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good argument. Like,
But where do they start? I mean, where does it start?
it doesn't. I'm saying it doesn't matter where it starts. My interpretation is the four winds are like in relation to a sail. You're saying they have to start from somewhere. Okay. Well, tell me more about this angel thing. Like the angels holding back the four. Like, what did the angels do? How did they govern their domains? Like, what does Enoch say about all that?
It's been years since I read it. But I don't understand the question. I
Well, I've been talking about external criterions about what makes your idea more plausible
want me
than
to-
mine. If you want to use Enoch as an example of how the angels would operate in the dream, that's a fair thing to say because I used Daniel to say why I think I use Daniel to back up my claim. You could use Enoch to back up your claim. So I'm trying to figure out like what does Enoch say?
It just the book just describes because Enoch was taken, as it says in Genesis, and he walked with God, so he could see how everything worked. I guess the angels showed him around.
Same thing happened to Job.
I'm sorry, Trevor. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, when God took Job up and showed Job that he was God, basically, by showing him all these different visions.
Yeah.
Same thing happened to Enoch. It's just Enoch had a lot more happen than Job did in the visions.
Okay.
Enoch's weren't visions, though. I mean,
Were they not visions in the story?
They were encounters. They were full on encounters.
I haven't read the Book of Enoch, so you guys will have to fill me in on that.
Like I said, it's been years since I read it. I'm just going off the basic gist of it.
Okay.
So basically, when you know how Enoch got taken into heaven, just like Elijah. Okay, well, Enoch was able to come back and write everything down.
Okay.
And that was taken out of what's the original Bible? What was the Bible they took it out of? I don't remember.
It's just the Ethiopian Bible. Isn't that what you said,
so they
Cody?
took it out because it's deep.
Yeah,
stuff.
there's been a big fight about which books are canonical and which aren't, and different books have different versions of the Bible have different books. Yeah, so
and this is why we could debate about it all night long and keep going.
Okay. Well, let's just rewind and get back to where we were. So, Cody, you think that there's certain scriptures that demand that the earth has to be flat?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to quote any others, and I'll shut up and not argue with you about it, and you can just quote them?
See if I can find them.
Okay.
I will be right back.
All right.
No worries. That's not it. So what, Gary? Well, I'm looking for this. What makes you feel like you're on a ball, besides what you've been told?
Are we talking emotionally or physically?
Anything besides what you've been told.
I don't even remotely care. Like I got riled up, and I do apologize for that. I got riled up because the way people read scriptures is something I do care about quite intensely. As far as like whether or not we're on a flat Earth or a round Earth, I don't even remotely give a crap. But
Gotcha.
So.
Okay. How about First Chronicles 16:30? Tremble before him, all the earth. Indeed, the world is firmly established; it will not be moved.
Okay.
So if you're going to apply that to the Earth's inhabitants, you're way off.
Okay. Well, keep going. I'm not going to argue with you. I want you to rapid fire your verses.
Indeed, the world is firmly established; it will not be moved. It actually says that twice. Another
Okay.
time in Psalms. Oh, two more times in Psalms. Sorry.
Yeah.
We went through those already. Sorry, buddy. Going through these individual files is
No, you're good.
great.
Trying to think of something to say. Yeah,
Job
no, I think
26.
you got him.
Job 26:7 says he stretches out the north over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing. I believe it's because it's on pillars, as it says. But he stretches out the north over empty space. I mean, that describes the firmament pretty well.
Okay. Some people would also argue it explains the stretching out of the universe.
But it says the north.
That's a fair point. Not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that's what some people. I think people have used that scripture to defend the redshift.
Oh, okay.
We're back
But
on the
again,
redshift.
I wouldn't agree with that methodology myself. I don't like when people use
Ooh.
those scriptures from those portions of the Bible to try to make scientific claims. I don't think that's a good
Yeah.
idea. But anyway, sorry,
got
go
you.
on.
This one's pretty solid, though. I mean, it's out of Job, but he has inscribed a circle on the surface of the waters at the boundary of light and darkness. So where's the boundary on a ball? Boundary's a pretty hard word.
Yeah, edge of space type of thing.
It's not a boundary, though. We established that. There's no hard, fast barrier. to gradient.
I'm assuming you're referring to the ice wall, like a boundary between the Earth and space.
I feel like that's probably what it's referring to, but
Okay. I mean, no, I'm just listening, so I'm not
Yeah.
gonna argue at this
I
point.
mean, I don't believe in space. I mean,
Well, okay. You gotta explain to me what you do believe.
I can't believe in the vacuum because it's not replicatable,
Okay.
right? If you can't repeat it on the Earth, I don't think it's real. Just like all the gases coalescing in space, that doesn't make sense. That's the opposite of what happens.
Have they done experiments about what gases do in vacuums?
Yeah, they spread out.
Can you give us a video or show us anything like that on your Telegram deal?
It might take me a while to find one.
Okay.
Let's see. Gases. You might want to fill the dead air a little bit.
Okay. The reason we're doing this is because I think it's important that every idea gets considered. That's why we're having this conversation. It's not so much that, I mean, obviously Cody and I disagree, but that doesn't really matter. It's important that every idea gets talked about. And one of my great irritations is people become automatically dismissive of things because they think the work's already been done. That is a bad attitude that limits science if you're really super interested in that sort of thing. Closing off an idea is never a good idea, no matter how crazy the idea might be. We talk about things because that's how we build methodologies. Our collective knowledge and our different perspectives are how we grow. By saying something is crazy, that automatically limits your intellect.
Like I'm right, you're wrong, and you're crazy for thinking that. You should be locked up or whatever.
Yeah, well, it's lazy. In my opinion, it's just lazy. It keeps people from having to do research on stuff. So,
That's true.
That's when it becomes not science, because science is what we can see and observe and learn from. That's
Right.
what science is.
Right.
Well, the scientific method is disproving your own theory. So it's like,
Yeah.
if you think you have it figured out, this is the fear of the Lord that we were talking about the other day. If you think you have it figured out, you're wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually, yes, that's correct.
Yep.
So it's important to not be dismissive of anything, and I'm a firm believer in that, and that's why we're talking about this. And we can argue and carry on, but we're not necessarily here to persuade each other. It's for the people out there to make up their own minds.
I can't see very good, so I'm not a great researcher tonight.
It's all right. You've had a rough day, sounds like.
But So gases, I mean, they do spread out. That's what happens. Like when you open a bottle of helium, it goes everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just not going to go to the center.
But would that same thing happen in a vacuum?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if I remember right, the video I saw made a gradient. Like it kind of went to the top. I don't remember what kind of gas it was, though.
Okay.
Yeah. Just going to the center of a vacuum, like that doesn't make any sense, dude.
Okay, well, I don't know enough about gases to argue. I was just thinking, I was under the impression that was the general theory, was that because the gases are more dense, they're going to collect in a central point, same way matter would. They're not going to just spread out indefinitely. But because like you pointed out, I think it was in the previous podcast, you pointed out that, what was it? Like explosions might not have as much of an effect on a craft, like a spacecraft, because that force can't really do anything. It wouldn't go anywhere. So in theory, those gases should just settle because there's no force. They should, in theory, just kind of fall indefinitely, if anything.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So but it's physics. It's kind of getting really into the weeds on it, and I don't know enough to talk about it. Frankly, you could be right. I wouldn't know. So
yeah. Most of the things that they say happen in space, that we can't repeat them. So it's really hard for me to say, yeah, space is probably real.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a way better explanation for it in the Bible, and when you walk outside and look around, I mean, you can just observe and do better.
All right. Well, observe like what? Observe what? Like, is there anything you can observe that would make a round Earth impossible?
Yeah, we can see too far.
Okay. Which would mean that we're a flat surface?
Well, it would mean the measurements that they give us, 8 inches per mile squared, I mean, we can see further than that. And you can't see through. Like if you're looking off the edge of a ball, you can't see through it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And the reason it's hard to see when you are on the ground, and it gets easier to see when you're higher, is because you're looking through less water, like a less dense atmosphere. The higher up you get, the less water is in the air.
Okay.
Right. So the same reason like planes go up, when they go up too high, there's no more air to fly on. They can't go that high.
Right.
So it's because there's no water in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you're standing at ocean level, you're looking through all the bottom of that gradient, that water gradient. So you're looking through all that water. But when you get up higher, it's easier to see because there's less stuff clouding the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Could it have something to do with sea level? Like maybe the fact that the land is higher up than the water. Could that be why we're still seeing objects from a long distance off?
I don't understand the question.
Well, from what I understand, what you're basically saying is the reason we can't see as far, and maybe I misunderstood something, but you basically got the reason we can see as far as we do is because we got a flat surface, at least flat compared to what they tell us. There's no way that if you've got a sloping planet, you should be able to see a ship after a certain distance. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm saying is, okay, that might be true, but if you think about it on a little smaller level, I don't feel like elevation is being factored into this. So if you've got a beach or you're standing on an incline, and then technically what you're doing is like, say your ship is here, you're up here. Technically what you're doing is you're looking down.
Yeah. No, that's why I was talking about the gradient thing.
Okay. Well, I feel like that would explain how there's a curvature to the Earth, though.
Right, but you can do the math. Like, you can sit at ocean level and bring stuff back into view.
You can sit okay.
I've taken a telescope to the ocean on the beach and brought ships back into view.
Okay.
But I couldn't see anymore.
Okay. Well, I mean, But the fact that you're at sea level, though, means you're higher than the sea, though. You understand what I'm saying?
Not by much.
No, not by much, but it's kind of a math thing.
The ship was as tall as me.
Yeah, I mean, well, the ship would be much bigger than you, wouldn't it?
Right. So you're at the same level.
Oh, how do I explain this? Maybe. I would think, though, that if the ship is taller than you, it's going to look smaller from a distance. It's going to look higher up than you, but the elevation, the ship's going to be, say, I don't know, you're this tall, the ship's this tall, but you're up here, and the ship's down here. I don't know. I'm saying maybe that the fact that the ship, I'm basically saying that elevation would probably account for why you're still seeing it, because the fact that you're at sea level means you're going to be higher than the sea. And if the object is bigger, that kind of further compounds the problem, or at least further explains why you're still able to see it.
Maybe.
If that makes any sense.
I guess.
It's all math and numbers, and we're not physicists, so it's getting into the weeds. But is there something else?
I don't know.
Well, we can make it simpler.
You guys have any questions?
Sorry, Trevor, what?
We can make it simpler. There's snipers out there that talk about this. The elevation and whatnot.
Coriolis effect?
When they're shooting something, they take
because the bullet curves
elevation.
down.
The bullet always curves down.
Okay, is that because of elevation or because it's fighting gravity?
Both.
Okay.
They take into account elevation, gravity, wind shift, all of it. And so when they fire, the bullet's going to go towards the object.
Gotcha.
But then as it slows down, it's going to drop.
Right.
And
sorry.
So they have to aim kind of at, a higher level.
Yeah.
To make up for all of that.
Okay. Cody, did you have something you were going to say a second ago?
Do you guys have any questions? I'm bad at presenting.
I'm trying to think. Tell me more about this ice wall. Like, what's the story behind the ice wall? Like, what's the thought behind that? Just that there's an ice wall at the edge of the earth, or?
I mean, Antarctica is the highest elevation on Earth. So that can kind of tell you if it is a circle, and they've just, with our current map, they've smashed it into a little thing, but it's actually a circle that goes around us. Yeah. If that's the case, it makes us like a bowl shape, right? Mm-hmm. That, the highest elevation is on the outside of the bowl.
Okay.
Kind of like in the cartoon Ice Age. They were in a bowl of ice. Yeah.
Okay.
There's no, you can't go there. It's illegal. Cruises.
Yeah.
So it's illegal to go to Antarctica still?
Yeah.
Without permission, yeah.
Is the military using it, or? I've heard of like there being military bases.
It's all settled by military. It's like
just America or like everybody?
Everybody. There's a treaty. I think there's like 55 countries. It's like way back.
What's the worst that could happen?
Nobody can go there.
They could throw hurricanes at whatever.
There was a guy that went. He was from New Zealand.
Did he?
I don't remember his name. He had a weird name. But he had a couple of buddies that died.
Really?
And it was a bad deal. He kept trying to go, and the government kept throwing him in jail. Yeah.
So did the government kill his friends, or was it like?
I don't want to make any claims.
Okay. Well, what did they claim happened, and how likely is that true?
I don't know the story well enough to repeat it.
That's my
problem.
It's
been so long since I looked into all this stuff. I feel like a terrible guest.
No, well, you're a co-host. You're not a guest.
Yeah, I consider you a co-host at this point.
Yeah. So
we want to get as many co-hosts on here as we can.
Yeah.
We need people who know math to talk about this
Right.
flat Earth stuff. I thought we were going to be talking about satellite dishes and airplane stuff, and we're getting into the curvature of the Earth. And I'm like, numbers, you know. We
I
need
just started at the bottom, man.
we need people who understand this from a physics standpoint, and it sounds like we're getting into like really complicated physics questions.
There's some boys called Space Audits, and they're badass. I would love to send you their way.
Cool. Yeah, space audits.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go check them
Sometimes they do like physics and reading night, so we'll just go through a physics textbook and just read.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I understand minuscule amounts of it.
Yeah, I would like want to die.
We could do a react video to whatever that was.
I don't think we would react to much because
we'd be sitting here like zombies.
Oh man, I can't tell you the names because I don't want to embarrass people because they would probably be furious if they were associated with a Flat Earth podcast. But there was a particular gentleman at the at where I work. Let's just put it that way. And I remember he was one of the nicest guys, and I enjoyed talking to him to death. But he was really, really smart. He's really book smart. You know what I mean? And so he's tried to talk to me about the unlikelihood of evolution building bacteria. And he was talking about how to diagram accurately sequence space. And so, which is basically all the possible scenarios of chemical combinations you can get before you get a protein and eventually get a bacteria. And he had represented it through a giant circle with all these different dots in it, and the dots were the combinations that didn't work, and the black dots were the combinations that didn't work, and some other color like red or something. The red dots are what did work. And of course, the bigger the organism, the less scenarios actually played out. And he was trying to explain this to me, and he's using all these different terms, and I just kind of had my eyes glazed over, and like I had no idea what he was saying, but I loved the energy behind how he said it. So it's like, I can tell you're passionate, so I'm gonna be passionate too. I'm gonna feed off that energy, but I have no idea what you're talking about. So
that's all you can do, just listen till you start learning stuff.
Yeah, it started to sink in eventually. But
Yeah.
But anyway, so Cody, is there anything else you want to cover?
I don't think so, bud.
Okay, Trevor, you got any thoughts?
Never.
Okay.
Good.
Well, we're going to continue to explore this topic. I'm not done with it. I'm going to come up with rebuttals, and I'm going to find a video or something that gives the back and forth. I want a debate. I want a debate with people who know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So, because I want to be able to analyze that stuff. So I'm curious. We are not finished with this subject, but we are finished for now. So, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right, see you guys.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Faith, Fiction, and Folklore. If you did, we would love it if you would subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Rumble. We can also be found on X, Instagram, and Facebook. And we are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Thank you again very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.